Good morning and welcome to the new edition of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. USA is witnessing burning, looting, protests, tear gassing, firing of bullets. And it's all over United States. The race riots, engineered on a national scale with their repercussions in Europe, is something which is not new in USA. President Trump had to order, as I discussed on Sunday, the troops to move in. National Guard has been activated. But the riots are not stopping. And unfortunately, the whole thing is on the claim of Black Lives Matter. While the Black lives do matter, let's not forget that the brown lives also matter, that the white lives also matter, that yellow lives also matter. All life matters. And you cannot have the concept of lives of one color matter while the lives of other colors are put at stake. And not only black. Imagine it. The black police officers are killed. One black police officer in St. Louis was killed. Another lady black officer was shot dead. And there is no cry about that. So, black lives matter only when the killer is non black. If that is so, it is shocking. Then black lives don't matter, which should matter. Any life lost, be it black or blue, be it yellow or be it white, be it brown or be it sunburned, all lives matter. The moment you say black lives matter, you are instigating riots. You are instigating divisiveness. You say all lives matter and there's no divisiveness. But let's come to that. Is 30 years of race riots in America now, the modern era. I'm not talking of the Civil War and the atrocities on slaves. I'm not talking of the slaves rising in rebellion and killing some white owners. I'm talking of systemic riots post Martin Luther, post King, starting with the Little Rock, killing of Rodney King, and coming on to the Floyd. 30 years, 3 decades. Just about an hour back, I published a paper, 3 decades of race riots in USA. And it's amazing that USA still continues to be plagued in the 21st century with the race riots. And especially since it prides itself on being democratic, egalitarian, where there is no slavery. Is it just existence? Or can we follow an ostrich-like approach and pretend it does not exist? And no government over the years has taken really serious efforts to control it. Obama ruled Canada, USA for 8 years and did nothing except saying that the blacks had been exploited. And this has given rise to Black Lives That Matter, irrespective of one's color, creed, faith. That black lives do matter, but so do other lives. Now, what is amazing is that some overzealous Indian liberals and media persons have been quick to equate the plight of the black man in USA with the plight of the Muslims in India. And they say that there should be a movement in India to be called Muslim Lives Matter. Is it a right analogy? Can Indian Muslims be equated or compared with the black Americans? Is the communal divide between Hindus and Muslims on the same lines as between the whites and the blacks in USA? Is it racism? Now, before I analyze this, first let's talk of the Black Lives Matter issue in USA. In USA, the race riots are essentially engineered race riots. Because if they were not engineered and it was only to protect the black life, there would have been riots when a black police officer kills a black man. But there were no riots. There would have been riots when the black officers killed a white woman. There were no riots. There would have been riots when the protesters killed the black police officers. There were no riots or counter protests over that. There are riots only when a white person kills a black person, and that too in a place, in a community where there is rampant anti Republican attitude. And then look at the propensity. If a riot takes place in a certain location where something bad has happened, nobody is condoning the death of Floyd, and I'll be the first person to say that the guy who has been arrested should be given exemplary punishment. That is a given. But when they spread all over the country, and even the White House is not immune to the protest, then that clearly shows that there is something more than meets the eye. That's politically orchestrated, engineered, and dovetailed so that all over the country the protests are there. And then not only that, there are protests in Germany, there are protests in France. But one thing interesting, you'll be happy that all these protests, there's been no increase in coronavirus cases. All the talk of social distancing, of lockdowns has been forgotten, and hundreds and thousands of the people are assembling without any regard to social distancing, without wearing a mask, and the coronavirus seems to have taken a holiday. Well, it will not strike the protesters, seems to be the cry of coronavirus. Is that so? Then they're welcome. I mean, the protests. Isn't it shocking to what extent the politicians can go to ensure that their opponent is put to trouble? Where ordinary people having small shops are looted, where there is robberies galore and nobody cares, where murders take place, ordinary murders, and the murders are given a go by because the police is instructed not to do anything. So whole thing smacks of pettiness, selfishness, and political chicanery. Whole thing smacks of gangsterism in the garb of free speech. And then imagine the ordinary facts are things which should have been lauded as it was done. When Clinton comes out with the Bible in his hand, people say, how nice, he is a real Christian. Trump does the same, and it is said that he is dividing the nation because he's holding a Bible, and the people who don't believe in Bible would be outraged. This happened yesterday evening. Can anything be more shocking? The whole Saga of 30 years, 3 decades of race riots in USA shows that every race riot starts as an ordinary protest and then the media and the politicians take over and make it much more widespread than it would have been. Now, coming to the new theme being developed to create protests and a bloodshed in India. And they have said very clearly that in India they need a movement called Muslim Lives Matter, as if Christian lives do not matter, Sikh lives do not matter, Hindu lives do not matter. But then let's study some facts before we can really compare Black Lives Matter and Muslim Lives Matter, two very stupid dogmas. Anyway, coming to the comparison, in USA neither whites nor blacks are Native Americans. Don't be shocked. Ancestors of the most whites came as immigrants from Europe and UK, and that happened after 1492 when India was ruled by the Mughals. Akbar the Great was ruling India, and they had been ruling for 800 years, the Mughals, because before the Mughal dynasty there was slave dynasty, there was Lodi dynasty, and so on, Khilji dynasty. Qutb bin Aibak came in 600 odd AD. 1492, America was populated after its discovery. So the whites are just 500 years old, 600 years old. And blacks, their ancestors were forcibly transported from Africa and sold as slaves to USA in the 17th or the 18th century. Whites were predominantly Christians, and over a period of time, the black Americans also adopted Christianity. So neither blacks nor whites can lay any claim to being the original inhabitants of the land known as USA. Now compare this to India. Both Hindus and Muslims are sons of the soils who have common heritage, including common ethnicity. You might say, well, most of the Hindus are also progeny of the Aryans who came centuries back. Yes, but then centuries back and 600 years, 6 centuries. As a matter of fact, Aryans inhabited India and became a part of India at that time when there was no fixed countries. India was more than 1,000 countries at that time. But then they have been in this country, they became Indians, they are recognized as Indians. So ancestors of the Indian Muslims were ethnically the same as Hindus. They were converted to Islam during the Muslim period for various reasons. Mass conversions under bigoted rulers like Aurangzeb, conversions for greed, and so on. Then another major difference, which I hope Modi is going to set right. In USA, both whites and blacks swear by the same constitution and hold it above any religious belief. This ensures a common civil code for all Americans, apart from a common law of the land. Allegiance to the nation is above their allegiance to the religion. Not here in India. Everyone accepts the same constitution, but there are times when one community, the Muslims, hold their religion above the constitution as it suits them. Many Muslims are demanding the right to be governed by Sharia law as opposed to the law of the land with a common civil code. So, for many Muslims, allegiance to the religion comes before the nation. It does sound hard, but this is the reality. And the desire of the Modi to have a common civil law may be a good thing, or rather, definitely be a good thing. So these are the two differences. The third, in USA for centuries, the blacks were forced into slavery by the whites and denied basic fundamental rights. Their lives were on the mercy of the white masters. Has India seen anything like this in its 6,000-year-old history? If anything, it was a Hindu majority that was oppressed by the Muslim rulers at some times, like at times of Aurangzeb, but otherwise there was no victimization of the Muslims ever, and their rights were never trampled on. When USA became an independent nation in 1776, there was amalgamation of different states, and India became 47. India was divided into two countries, a Muslim predominant Pakistan and Hindu predominant India. And the Muslims who wished to stay back in the land of their ancestors were welcome. They were not castigated as second-rate citizens. As opposed to that, Hindus in Pakistan have reached almost a point of extinction. Then, another difference. Blacks in USA do not have any political, any financial or moral support from other black nations of the world, Africa and others. And the black citizens in USA not only believe in their country but do not want any outside interference in their country. There's nothing like worldwide black brotherhood. But Indian Muslims have sought political, financial, and moral support from many Islamic countries across the world. OIC, Organization of Islamic Countries, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, funding all the churches, the masjids in India. Muslims in India have been openly soliciting foreign intervention for perceived grudges. There is international Islamic Brotherhood that believes in the spread of Islam. If this harms their nation, India, that doesn't bother them. There are more differences that can be listed. Has any black dominated state or region in the USA carried out ethnic cleansing by forcing whites out of that state? No. But it happened in India. Hindus had to leave, especially Pandits, Kashmir in 1991. USA has a decade-old bill that gives preferential citizenship rights to Jews. But when India tried to give it to the Hindus and the Sikhs of Pakistan, there was a hue and cry not only in India but mostly in Pakistan and over the globe. In India, it was not much of a problem except some as personal politicians who had the personal axe to grind. And there were unwarranted protests from the Muslims that rocked the nation. Then, USA boasts of 6 presidents since 1776 who had some connection to the black ancestors, but the reality is that there is only one black president in USA, and that was Barack Obama. On the other hand, India had as many as 4 Muslim presidents in just 72 years and 3 vice presidents. And yet, there have been regular riots. But there's a fundamental difference between riots and racism. What happened in Minneapolis was an act of racism. A white man purposely killing a black. It doesn't happen in India. Racism is about one group considering itself superior to the other. Therefore, it believes in the right to mistreat the other. On the other hand, what happens in India is the communal riots. These are acts of physical violence between two groups that are equally placed, since there is nothing about superiority and inferiority among them. They are equally placed groups. So they are communal riots, not racism. So some excesses have been perpetuated on Muslims. I don't deny it. But haven't Hindus suffered those troubles in Kashmir and other places? In Punjab earlier, during Khalistan period? So in light of all these facts, is there any rationale in comparing blacks of USA with the Muslims of India? No. You cannot compare apples and oranges. Both are fruit, as Muslims and the blacks are human beings, but the situation is different. Any talk of Islamophobia among Hindus is a figment of imagination. By doing so, their minds are actually depicting perceived Hindu phobia mindset, and that is objectionable. So, the need of the hour is to see that we do not in any way act under the directions of the petty politicians whose main purpose is personal aggrandizement. And then you would realize that democracy does not mean Black lives matter or Muslims matter. It means all lives matter. And that is most important. Thank you.